Yep. And let's set an agenda.
Okay, so just for the record, welcome to the meeting. This is the March the 4th, 9 a.m. Pacific time, and this is the Antrea community meeting. Welcome, everyone.
Ooh. So the agenda for today for getting together was primarily to give Jay an opportunity to share with everyone what he's been working on the upstream testing. And then if we have a few minutes after that, I thought we would just quickly touch base on our plans for if there were any other things we need to discuss before we chat with our project with Tim. And if there's any other things on the agenda after that, we can just definitely jump into those.
Sounds good.
Without further ado, Jay, you wanna jump in?
Yeah, sure. So this is obviously a big broad effort. As you can see, actually, Abhishek pushed the last commit to it, so I appreciate all the help from everybody. So we have kind of two things that are in play right now. We have a upstream PR to really standardize the way that we look at CNIs and the way that we validate them, right? And we have obviously the first implementation of what we care about for that PR in Antrea. So yeah, here's kind of the actual proposal we have, and I'll just view the file so I can have it over here on the right. So yeah, this is what we're working on, and the main point of it all, as many of you know, is that the current test matrices in Antrea, in upstream Kubernetes network policies look a little bit like this. They just validate two things. And in order to actually really test a network policy properly, you have to really validate that the entire state of the network is correct. And we've seen several issues that allude to that in Antrea and in Calico and in other places where, you turn one thing off and other things don't work. The most interesting notable one that we saw recently was, I think when you use Calico for certain policies and EC2 is the data plane, you have issues where like if you have like a pre-start hook, certain pods won't come up because the IP address hasn't been updated in the CNI yet. So there's all these complicated semantics that aren't really easy to reason about. And so we've built essentially like a DSL, as Cody calls it. And DSL allows you to very succinctly, in just like one or two lines of code, define a network policy and some assumptions, which can then be used with the generic reachability matrix to validate all of the connectivity in the network, both positive and negative, which means you can define very sophisticated tests like this in just, 30 or 40 lines of code. The current network policies in upstream Kubernetes, any of you tests in upstream Kubernetes, anyone who's looked at them, are very hard to interpret and are like a single line like this could take 10, 15, 20 lines of code to implement because they build the entire struct. And so it's very difficult to reason about how things should be connected and whatnot. So that's what we're building. And, thanks to the Antrea folks, we were able to merge the first copy of it into Hack the other day, and it's runnable as like an executable. And I know Antonin is going to start adding some things to it too. But yeah, the main kind of work is kind of been merged in, and with Sadef, Abhishek, and me, and Matt Fenwick from another company kind of built all that out. And it looks like Antrea team's kind of doing a great job of helping us move it forward and add it to CI and all sorts of other things. So I can answer questions, or I can walk through how a test might work, or we can talk more about other sorts of stuff. But that's pretty much it for the broad overview of like what we've been up to with this new framework. And we're really looking forward to having this upstreamed into Kubernetes core pretty soon, I think.
Jay, so yeah, I've been working on it yesterday, and I think it's awesome. It runs really fast, and I think it's going to run even faster once we start running the probes in parallel. And I actually opened a PR to add this into CI because I think it's good for Antrea and it's good for this proposal to make sure things don't get broken
Cool.
while the code stays in Antrea. So I requested your review on this. So yeah, if you can take a look, that would be great. But everything can be part of CI, and everything's working right now.
Okay, great. Yeah, and to his point, I think the main thing here, there's a lot of stuff going on, but really there's one major thing in here, which is this probe function and this whole repo, if you think about it. And what we've kind of done is we've moved away from an upstream test. What they do is they create a policy and then they probe that they wait for that policy to have a pod status of success. And so there's a lot of lazy asynchronous waiting around for stuff to work type stuff. You can't reason about what's going on. And for us, what Antonin's talking about in terms of speed is what we've done is we've moved to a probe functionality. So if you run this in cluster, what this is doing is all the pods are statically made, and then this probe function runs, and you can see it actually prints out the exact kubectl exec expression, and it goes off, and it just jumps into the pod and does a wget and sees if it can connect to another pod. So we run 81 of these per test because we have 3 different pods that each live in 3 different namespaces. So you have a 9x9 2-dimensional matrix of connectivity. So that's why we're a lot faster. But yeah, I'll definitely review that for sure, Antonin. I'm an easy reviewer, I just like look at the code and I'm like, well, I guess if somebody cared enough to do it, it's probably going to work, and then we can back it out later. But I will definitely look at it just so I can understand it better. But I definitely don't want to be gating stuff that any innovation that you all are putting into this. But yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, and I set things up so that the Docker image is built automatically as part of CI and pushed to Docker Hub as well.
Oh, that's very cool. That's great. Yeah, because that was a big problem with testing. So that's cool. The big thing to discuss, I think, is the we want to have like a generic scale type test in here, and the folks from Google had mentioned that as well. And I haven't thought architecturally of how we should fit that into this framework. Like, should we make a DSL that allows you to say an arbitrary number of pods and stuff? If we do that, I think the test will be, if we use that for everything, then the test will suddenly become less understandable. But if we have a specific test case that's totally generic that we understand is just for scale, I think that would be useful. But I've been batting that back and forth in my head about how generic, and I know Cody had some thoughts on that too, like how generic and declarative should we go, because we can go further than we've already gone, and scale testing is something we obviously really care about with Antrea and testing even our other plugins like Calico or whatever else we support, right?
Right.
So I don't know, does anybody have any opinions on that?
I think for the scale part, it depends on what would be the eventual goal of this script or this framework. Because if we want to replace the end-to-end test, then maybe what we have and improve the coverage and different kind of test cases, that would be fine. But if you want it to be like a separate thing which does everything for network policies, then maybe we can consider adding scale framework and do some sort of churn testing, have like a large scale cluster with network policies being added, deleted, and verify that the connectivity and the truth table is correct in that sense. So I guess the question to ask is what is the expectation out of this framework, and whether this is going to be replacing the upstream end-to-end test or not, or it's going to live somewhere else in Kubernetes.
I think we definitely want to replace what's there upstream. We definitely, I think from talking to everybody, it seems like the consensus is, I'm open to ideas on this, of course, and I think all of us are, but it seems like the consensus was that we do want all this stuff upstream. We want to build an upstream standard for high quality CNI, coherence, right? Like, so I think we want to get it upstream, and yeah, that's the tricky thing, is how far should we go, right? Before we go upstream. I know, Antonin, what were you were going to do something around making it exit 0 or exit 1 as a starting point, right? Without actually necessarily adding test semantics into it. I think that's a good middle ground.
Yeah, but I realized that I wanted to be able to keep running it as a Kubernetes job the way you've been doing it. So if you run it as a Kubernetes job, you cannot really do that. So
You can have the job fail, right? Because if it exits one,
No, it's gonna restart. It's gonna try again.
oh, but you can change that. You can make the job run only once.
Yeah, I guess there isn't that much point in having a job then. You know,
Mhm.
you're basically just creating a pod and running it once, right? So it's
Yeah,
it's
that's true. Yeah.
not your job really.
Yeah, I mean, it could just wind up being a bash wrapper to a pod, right? Yeah, and then, I mean, to Abhishek's point, yeah, the more framework stuff we put on this, the harder it's going to be to back out that framework stuff and put it into upstream Kubernetes. So I like that idea of, yeah, just making it exit one, run it as a pod. I don't know why I did it as a job. I think I just was trying to be fancy or something. I don't think there was much advantage for me to do it that way either, really. Um, but yeah, yeah, I guess that would be a good way to do it then. Just we can change the job thing to a pod, and then we can just have a shell script and run that in CI. Is that the thinking? I guess that was kind of directed at you, Anton. Is that what you're thinking? Like just have a static pod, you create it, check whether it, oh, you're muted, that's why. Oh, yeah, Anton, you're muted.
Oh yeah, sorry guys. I didn't hear the last thing Jay said because Abhishek's mic is really loud and Jay's mic is really loud. So I'm trying.
Oh yeah, okay, here we go. Okay, is that better?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So what about the bash script?
I
So
mean,
I
it's,
thought about changing to a pod, yeah, because that makes sense if we want to return a non-zero exit code.
yeah, so as you're thinking, literally have a pod, the pod runs the container and it exits 0 or exit 1, and that's what we run in CI. I think that's good enough for our trip, right?
Oh yeah, ultimately I do have a wrapper script that takes care of creating a cluster, a kind cluster and everything. So but
Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea. I think that works. So and then we can, and then we can start thinking about how to back this into Kubernetes. Now, one of the interesting things, some of you, I don't know if we've talked about this, was that when I was talking to Bowie about this over at Google, he was saying, we should actually start writing all of the upstream tests this way, not just the network stuff. So this may kind of evolve into a broader improvement of the way we verify other things in upstream test, but that would be like a follow-on thing. But so yeah, we'll keep the framework discussion out of it, and we'll just do an exit one and on failures, and then that's it.
Are you going to be presenting this at the SIG network meeting?
I think I better. I think I'm supposed to. Yeah, I think I'm supposed to do that. Thanks for reminding me. I will. Yeah, I'll present that. And hopefully, yeah, we can talk about it there. That's tomorrow. So, yeah.
I think you're far enough along that we can go ahead and discuss how we want to take this to the broader SIG network as well.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean the broader SIG network? I mean, it's about as broad as we can get. We have a KEP now, so.
Okay. So there's no other follow-up we need to do then with the broader SIG network. Everybody's aligned.
I mean, I think so. Yeah. I mean, it seems like there's pretty broad interest. I mean, like Antonin mentioned, I should probably present it at the meeting tomorrow. But we do have, like, Bowie's a reviewer on this. We've got we've got some comments on it. Let's see. I haven't looked at them in a while. Hope there's nothing nasty on here. This is a horrible idea. I can't believe you tried to change the way we evaluate. No, nothing bad. So just some ideas from Squeed. He actually introduced something interesting here. It turns out a lot of people have thought about this problem. Someone had written this thing called Illuminatio, which essentially is a similar approach to building like basically a tool that's specific to network policy validation. And so I thought that was kind of interesting that someone else had already done this, or had already kind of tried to build their own sort of tool for this. So Squeed left a couple of drive-by comments, but he never replied. One of them was to node-specific testing, which is cool because that's something we saw in Antrea. There was a node-specific policy bug. And this is another interesting thing that he mentioned, which is the scale test comment, which is that, well, I think it's a scale testing issue, but basically what he was saying is, we should make sure that the order in which you create policies versus create pods versus labeling them is completely irrelevant. So you could create a pod and then create a policy, or create a policy and create another policy and then create a pod and stuff like that. And nevertheless, you always converge to the proper security model. So what I was thinking was that, yeah, that's great. But the problem with that is there's so many different permutations of ordering, which is that I feel like what really should happen is that's the scale test scenario, where you would just say create lots of pods and policies randomly, and then back calculate what you expect the state of the security matrix to be, and then see if it matches. And if you ever come up with a scenario where that fails, then you're like, oh yeah, something's broken, and then you can dive deeper into it.
Right.
Although
Okay.
I think that particular, maybe we can do two scenarios out of that, like network policy first and pods later, and then pods first and network policy later, because I think that's a very interesting case. The way the network policy is implemented, it's like you either get an add pod event, or and you do something, or you get an add network policy event and you do something, and you might have a bug in either if the order is switched. So I think at least if we do one scenario, not for every feature, but just a couple of test cases with the change in order, I think that would be interesting. That would be good to have.
Yeah, actually, I'll CC you on this comment. What was, I forgot your GitHub, ABIH?
Abhirav, ABHIRAU.
Yeah, so I CC'd you on that comment. So if you can leave that feedback into Kep, that would be awesome. Because I think, first of all, it's good to have some dialogue on there so that we can really start moving forward with it. But also, I agree with you. That's a good point, right? So that maybe we should have two specific separate test cases around it. So I just CC'd you on that comment. And then I CC'd Sedef on another comment because she had an idea about node-specific tests. And that was something else that Squeed had mentioned. So, and I think if someone's interested, it would be interesting to look at NFX Illuminatio and see if we want to borrow some features from that. I probably won't have time to look at that, but that's another interesting thing. Do we want to divide up work at all around this, Antonin or Abhishek or anyone else thinks like we should divide up work, or are we happy with what's there and we're happy that we can maintain it? And I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that guy that like does the drive-by PR and then doesn't help anymore afterwards. You know what I mean? I really want to make sure that we give all the support. Us that don't work on Antrea full time, give all the support we need to you all to, so that you can be successful using this.
So I was looking at Illuminatio and it looks kind of interesting. I think you define network policies and then it kind of like validates that your cluster implemented correctly, which is kind of like the idea I had when I talked about fuzz testing. I guess that's kind of like that stochastic approach, except there are different levels of doing it. You can have fixed network policies and then validate that they're enforced correctly. And you can also like generate network policies like randomly. And that level.
Can I ask you for a stupid favor? Can you please share the link for this Illuminatio repo? Because I'm looking for it on Google and I only got religious stuff.
Yeah, well, check my screen out, Salvatore. So in my screen, it's right here. It's INOVEX.
Yeah, your eyes are much better than me. Let me zoom in. Let me zoom in.
Oh, there you go. Here you go. It's right
All
here.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Anton.
Yeah. So, but I'll put the link in the Zoom too, just in case anyone else wants.
You always have to include GitHub in your search, Salvatore.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So I kind of feel like an important early step would be to present that in person at the SIG network meeting to get some actual feedback that you may not get on your GitHub PR. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what we'll do, I guess, tomorrow. So, is it running in CI already? It'd be, I mean, do we have like,
It will, as soon as the PR is merged. I mean, obviously it ran as part of the PR, but as soon as the PR is merged, it will run for every other PR which is submitted to Antrea.
Cool.
Running in parallel with other tests that we do, so there is no like a performance penalty, and it runs on a kind cluster. So actually, if someone runs the script locally, it takes care of everything for them, creating a cluster, pushing Antrea to it, building the Docker image, pushing it to the node, and running the test.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So how long does it take? Do we have any numbers on that when you run it in CI? For me, I was able to run it when I was running it in cluster pretty quickly, like about 4 minutes or something.
Yeah, it takes 15 minutes. That includes building the cluster and building Antrea.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
The test take about like.
Yeah, even I had like around 4 to 5 minutes when I ran in cluster.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Yeah. So I will make sure. Go on.
The only one thing that I was wondering, I mean, should we do it? I mean, considering it's a POC, I didn't really press on it, but we are giving the cluster admin service account to the role binding to the service account. So should we like specifically have a YAML for it, or you think it's fine? You guys think it's fine?
Question. I don't know.
Just a comment
on it, move. Sorry, say that again.
I left that comment when I reviewed the PR. I think Jay to keep it out of the YAML. I don't have a preference, honestly. So.
Yeah, that's another one framework thing, right? There's a whole class of questions that are like, at what point are we building a framework for people to run the test? And once you start doing RBAC, it's kind of like, okay, you know, this now you have to have instructions on how to modify the RBAC for a new namespace. And then you're like, well, should we have a customized template for this? And it just gets weird really quick. I like the idea of just having a shell script in there that solves our specific problem and telling people, here's how we run it. You know what I mean? Copy paste this shell script and hack it up if you want to run it on your own. That's kind of that's where I would land on that. But we could do something more fancy than that. And, you know, because the problem is like someone wants to run it in this namespace versus another namespace or something. So you need to parameterize a YAML at some point, you know. I guess people have this question all around the world every day, huh?
So I think maybe to conclude, I mean, my take is that this is great, but we should present it actually at SIG Network and get concrete feedback, because we kind of need to know the direction. Sure, we can keep adding stuff, we can keep adding tests and making it better, but at the end of the day, we're gonna have to integrate it upstream. I mean, we have to know if we're gonna be able to integrate it upstream, and then we have to do some work to make this happen. So that's gonna influence what we need to do.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So yeah, I'm assuming upstream's going to move forward with it from conversations I've had with people, but we know that upstream can be it could be a very long road to do that. So I think we should kind of go in parallel. I think we should build this to solve our problems, and to really become a standard either way. And I think that for now, we can be optimistic, but who knows, after tomorrow, maybe we won't be able to be as optimistic. But from what so far, talking to Bowie and Casey and a lot of other people, everybody wants this, right? So, but yeah, let's see what they say tomorrow. They may say something like, for example, we'd like to do the framework changes first in SIG test and then do the network policy updates later. And, you know, one thing's for sure, nobody really cares about network policies upstream. So part of the goal here is to get people to care about the way we validate them. Because if people cared about how these things work to begin with, we wouldn't be in this situation. So it's an interesting kind of conversation. Part of it is getting people to acknowledge that we have this code in upstream that's not used. And then the other part is to get people to care about the fact that the code should be better. And without going so far as for them to say, well, maybe we should just move this completely out of upstream because that's not our goal. But that seems to be happening to everything else in Kubernetes that isn't perfect, right? They're like, well, let's just get rid of it. It's not in core, right? So yeah, there's a lot of conversations. It could be like, you know, it could be a few months before. I mean, it will be a few months, but it could be, you know, it may take 6 months for us to get this truly into upstream. And so I think we have to think about how we're going to build the best framework we can to solve these problems in the interim. You know what I mean? Like some of the stuff we're just going to have to do on our own, I think, but we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see if we can slip this in tomorrow's agenda.
Yeah.
I don't know. Should we directly update? What's the protocol? Do we directly update the Google Sheet and add ourselves into the agenda list, or send someone an email?
Yeah, I think we can just add ourselves, right? I mean, do we have Cody? How does that work? Do you know how it works? I've never given a SIG network presentation.
Yeah, just add yourself to the agenda.
Yeah, I think it's just adding it to the agenda. I'll just like literally add myself right now. SIG network.
Now we can also give Tim a early notice today, I believe, in our discussion with him.
Absolutely.
There we go. Okay, yeah, maybe we can just do this in real time. Anything else we should discuss? I kind of have dominated this conversation, so obviously, you know.
Would you say we have feature parity with the tests which are upstream right now? Or that we still need to add like a lot more tests?
No, not a lot more. I think we need a CIDR test. I didn't do that because this current CIDR test in upstream is just kind of stupid. Like it tests one IP address. And then, so we talked about ways to do that better. And then I think there's like a couple other tests. None of them were hard to implement. They just seemed like they were kind of kludgy anyways. So but I think we got about 90% of them. Sadaf actually made a spreadsheet auditing them and looking at it. But I think I stopped at about, yeah, like 75, 80, 90%, something like that. You know, they have like 20. We have comments in them. I don't know if I did a comprehensive job, but there's comments in it for each test. And I tried to, where I could, make sure that I ported over the upstream Ginkgo descriptions. So let's see if they're still here. Yeah, like these. Well, this is commented out because it's broken, but that covers like 3 or 4 different tests. I think this covers a couple. This can be used, yeah. So this, yeah, this is another should. So the shoulds are all in the comments. But yeah, I think we're at about 80% or 90% of what they have. I think, you know, they have like 23 tests or something, and I think we have like 18 or something like that.
Yeah, so now there are about 26 tests upstream, and we are missing a few, but I think we can add them in the next couple of days. It should not be too hard.
Yeah, Abhishek keeps increasing the disparity between us and upstream. So that's good now. Abhishek has a test framework, so he can add his tests to us too. So if it wasn't for us, we would probably be at parity with upstream, ironically.
That's true.
But yeah, we're reasonably close, but not 100%. We could be 100% if we wanted to. It's not a hard thing.
So what are the next action items for this besides presenting at SIG Network? Is it adding more tests? Is it looking into Illuminatio? Because I think they have some pretty good ideas there. So I don't know, we can reconcile the two. Or is it something else, improving the framework in general?
If it was up to me, I like the idea of coming up with ideas and pushing them into Hack. You know, I think that the best thing we can do is kind of innovate right now and be creative, because I think at some point it's going to be very constrained in terms of what upstream is willing to accept. And I think we've done most of the groundwork to make sure that what we have is compatible with upstream. That's what I would prioritize, but I'm kind of weird. So, we could also be a little bit more engineering, like process driven about it and say like, here's what we actually need for Antrea from a requirements perspective and kind of get that in there. And I think that's really two totally different ways to go about it. And depending on what like maybe we should just vote on that. Should we prioritize for automation and CI, or should we prioritize for playing with ideas and stuff? I don't really have a strong opinion either way. I think everybody should probably weigh in on that. What do you think? What does everybody think we should be doing right now? Because we can't really do both at the same time.
Sorry, what was the alternative? Prioritize innovation or prioritize what?
Like, just really taking the requirements that we have for Antrea in terms of scale targets and other things and and compatibility matrix, like you said, upstream compatibility, all the basic stuff that we know we could flesh out and like flesh that stuff out. Like, I kind of think either way could work, right? Or we could do one and do the other later, Do we want to harden the code base or do we want to expand it? What do we want to really do? Or do we want to do both?
I'm always generally for doing one thing and doing it good, very well, rather than
Yeah.
doing many things and not doing any one of them quite well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a bit with Salvatore on this because, for example, if we have a very good and strong framework, it's very easy to add new tests. But if we start adding new tests and we have to change everything, then it can be tricky.
Okay, yeah, so the only thing I would say is let's do that, but let's at least solve the scale problem before we harden it. Because that's one thing we know we want to do that we don't support yet. So, you know what I mean? Like, we don't support the scaling stuff, but I think we should think about that because I think there may be some ways to rethink how we build tests with the scales thing and then think or maybe we could harden what we have and then solve the scale problem later. My only concern about that is that if we harden what we have and then solve the scale problem later, like the ability to build dynamic stuff, we may have two different testing frameworks. You know what I mean?
So for you, the scaling stuff is tied to the ability to create like new pods and new namespaces dynamically. Is that what you're saying? And add labels dynamically, or?
Yeah, like right now, look at what we do, right? We do this thing where we have A, B, and C. We create these and we create these namespaces, right? So we have this static component to the tests. I don't know, like, I guess maybe we could just harden the code base as it is and add a separate scale test and just do that orthogonally and accept that there's going to be a little code duplication there. Maybe that's the best way to do it. That way we can do what Salvatore is suggesting, and we can say that, yeah, there's a different test that kind of duplicates some of this logic, but that test is designed to do something different.
I think with the current approach, it's going to be really hard to fit like a scale test in the framework because if you have like 10,000 pods, are you going to do a 10,000 and 10,000 connectivity matrix? I don't think so. Right? So some adjustments are required anyway.
Yeah, and that's yeah, exactly. So yeah, like we'd maybe like what would you suggest we would do there?
It's hard, but you kind of have to select what you're going to be verifying in this case. You're not gonna like, I don't know if you're gonna generate like 10 million probes. I guess it's not such a big deal, but the way you display the information is gonna be different in any case.
Yeah, which is why I'm thinking maybe the scale test should be separate, and maybe the only thing the scale test does is reuse the K8's util library, right? Maybe it doesn't do anything else, right? Maybe all of this stuff is not useful for the scale tests. I mean, maybe some of it is. You know what I mean? But I mean, or the other thing we could do is we could make it, because see, we have this declarative thing here where we so like we go in here and we say, we have these expect clauses. Maybe with we can just make the reachability matrix, we can just have that take a Boolean that says, do you want to test the whole matrix, or do you only want to test the things that we've explicitly expected? Right? Like maybe when we cycle through all that, we can just literally test explicit rules, and then that would solve your problem.
Yeah, because that's true. Because if you have a scale test where you end up having like a lot of pods with the same labels, with the same network policy being applied to them, then you only really need to check one of them as like the source to verify ingress policies, for example.
Yeah. I mean, and that could be up to the test. Maybe the test wants to test a few of them or something. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. So maybe that's all we need to do. We just need to change the matrix to support that, and then we need to, there's probably some hard code stuff.
One kind of like pattern for each scale test, and the possibility to like parameterize it, increase the number of pods, the number of policies, the number of namespaces in the same pattern. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but then you can adjust to like different clusters.
Pods, namespaces, increase it over time, you mean?
Not over time, but let's say I want to run that scale test on a cluster with 100 nodes. Maybe you're going to use different parameters than if my cluster has 1,000 nodes.
Yeah, like query, like do pods per node as the metric, right? So you say like the scale test supports 30 pods per node, and then let the test figure out what to do.
Something like this, yeah.
Yeah. Do we have an issue for that? I know we like talked about that in the review process. Fuzz testing, is that the issue? One, two, well, Jun had one, it looks like. Network policy scale tests. Can we like hybridize?
Test in our, actually we do have a scale test in our current framework, I think.
Right, I think it's one credit for the other work we are doing to enable scale test simulation, whatever. I'm not sure if school you want to reuse or you create a new one.
Yeah, I mean I think that'd be kind of cool to take the requirements from that and try and import them if it was useful to you all, but network policies can deterministically be used to generate logical.
Basically what this issue describes here is like what Illuminati was doing.
Yeah. This is actually this is your idea. I just copy pasted your stuff from the review. So this is we probably actually this isn't the scale thing, because this is just the fuzz thing. So this is separate from the scale thing.
Yeah, it's not completely orthogonal in my mind, but yeah, it's pretty separate.
Yeah. Should I make a new issue, or should we combine with 224, or what? What do you all want to do?
I think a new issue sounds fine. Maybe we can have a new label Cody for the netpol stuff while it stays in the Antrea repo.
That sounds like a good idea.
So while Jay opens the issue, do you think we should move to the next item on the agenda since we're kind of running out of time? Cody?
No, I think we need to wrap it up.
Okay.
Any other topics going once, going twice?
No, there's just one very little thing that I wanted to bring up. I noticed that we have created an issue for implementing the OVSQ proxy in implementing the OVSQ proxy in Antrea. Let me find the link for that one. Just a second. I have too many tabs open. Sorry. It's issue number 463, and well, at the moment we don't have yet many details regarding this. I mean, apart from what Chan wrote in the description. The only thing that I wanted to add is that, of course, we are not yet in a position to target these 20 release, but incidentally, Kobe and a little bit myself started defining some work around this issue. So I think that we'll sync up with Joanne to try and join forces to work together on this. That's the only thing that I wanted to mention for today. And what is the we don't have much time left, so I don't know if we want to discuss some other topic or whether we want to have a look at the status of the 050 release, as you prefer.
Considering we have a call coming up here in a couple of minutes, maybe we just do a virtual update on that. I can ping everybody for some updates.
Sounds good. Yeah, seems reasonable. All right. Say that. I think Kobe was saying going 3, going 2, going 1. This is your last chance to talk. Or otherwise. So the only other update is, are we keeping the meeting for next week, right? We are not going to skip it. Is that correct?
Correct. That's
Perfect.
correct.
All right. So talk to you next Wednesday, and have a good one then.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Antrea.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Jay.
you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.